I would love to just identify some of the either SBC members and also the communication subcommittee members. And if you could please introduce yourself, what is your role, and and are you going to have any children benefiting from this project? I'll start with Steve.
Excellent. My name is Steve Brenham, and I am the proud principal of the Dale Street School. I am very excited to be here tonight and to be part of this. And not of my own children, but I do have 400 plus that will be benefiting greatly as part of my extended family that will be benefiting greatly. So thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Hi, I'm Jeff Martin, Superintendent of Schools. Really happy to be here, and thanks for showing up this evening, and hopefully learn some information about the project.
Hi everyone, I'm Mary Toole, Director of Student Services in Medfield. I also, none of my children will be benefiting, but I feel like children are mine now. So excited to learn.
Mr. Bob Sliney.
Yeah, Bob Sliney, I'm on the building committee subcommittee. I'm the representative of the board.
Super, thank you. And we've got Tracy Rogers back there. Hi, and Susan Maritam, all our kids. I'm Maria Schaefer. I'm on the SBC and also on school committee. And with that, I just want to explain, this is more of a formal format, informal, I should say informal. So we're going to have Dr. Marston do just a recap, and then tonight's topic is educational benefits. And so we'll have Steve Brenham and Barry Rule talk a bit about that. And then we've got Emily and Larry and Tina from Arrow Street to talk about building benefits. And then Lynn Stapleton will talk about the process. So folks on Zoom, I'm afraid we won't be monitoring Facebook Live for questions. So if you have questions, please enter them into the Zoom Q&A and also here. So with that, Dr. Marston.
Thank you, Madam May. So this has been a really challenging process for all of us, and it's taken a long time to get to this point.
Do you want the mic?
Do you need a mic?
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
And then more for anyone on Zoom. I can hear you fine.
All right.
I'm trying to get me out one of my
Emily,
numbers, so it's not-
Larry, can you guys hear us? Thumbs up.
How's that? Okay, it's really loud. I'll hold it down here. So it's been a process that we've been involved in for many years. Prior to my arrival, the district put in a statement of interest, and that was denied. And then there was a lag of time of putting more statement of interest in because the town was building the public safety building. So we couldn't have two projects going on at the same time. In 2016, we submitted a second SOI that was also denied, and then we were approved in the following year. So we're going on almost 5 years into this process right now. If you remember, at town meeting, we had money allocated for the feasibility study, and that's what we're in right now, is kind of going through that process. And we've been in there for a while, going through the feasibility study there. Echo, echo, echo. So some of the highlights of the feasibility study, looking at the selection of the project team, was we brought Left Field, our OPM, our owner's project manager, on board, and then brought Arrow Street, our architects, on board. So that was, part of that process. We submitted our PDP, our preliminary design program, to MSBA. And then we had an initial vote of the school building committee to look at the Wheelock site as our preferred site and where we wanted to have the new school. The MSBA board approved the preferred schematic of the Wheelock site, and then COVID hit, and we just thought it made sense to have a pause at that point to get more information from the community, more feedback. And then there was a lot of uncertainty at that time, if you remember, last March, April, May, and so on. So we put a real pause on the whole process, and then we did another vote to confirm and reaffirm the Wheelock site as well. Then the town meeting article that requested us to kind of take a look at that again, and we did that and went through that process again, and then we voted again to reaffirm the Wheelock site. So what we're looking at right now is to submit our schematic design to MSBA, which will happen in September, and then we'll go in front of the MSBA board in October, and then we're looking for a special town meeting at some point in November to vote to allocate and support the project. So that's kind of where we are in a real nutshell. We've been doing this for 5 years, almost 5 years now. And I know that Steve and Mary will really get into what the educational benefits are of this building and why we think it's so important to put the school at the Wheelock site.
Thanks, Jeff. Again, for the people just tuning in, my name is Steve Grenham and I'm the principal of the Dale Street School. And I was asked tonight to come and just talk a little bit about the educational benefits for the new elementary school being built here at the Wheelock site. I had made some notes because I like to break it down and try to simplify it for people, but be happy to answer questions after I'm finished. So what I try to do and what we try to do here, you know, in Medfield is that every decision starts with the kids. So I'm going to start with the benefits that it will bring the students. So first off, having an elementary school built here at the Wheelock site will provide smoother and less disruptive transitions for our students. One of the things, and I know Dr. Morrison has sent this out on numerous surveys, is, you know, we have 3 different elementary schools that carry all of our students. There's a lot of positive feedback for that, but one of the things that we've consistently heard is that transitions can be difficult. And it can be difficult for all kids. You know, sometimes if a kid is having anxiety, and unfortunately with the pandemic, we're seeing more and more of that, that will be something, okay, I'm going to bounce from one school, now I'm going across town, then I'm going to come back over. Also for our students on IEPs that have different services that they need, those transitions can be really challenging for them as well. And I think more than ever right now, that SEL piece is the most important thing. I'm happy to belong to a district where it's not just the new elementary school. This has been done since I've got here. I remember when we first started and talking to Dr. Morrison, it was a priority for him to have SEL in all the buildings. This is prior to the new elementary school. And I just think this fits our strategic plan to have less disruptive transitions. Also, I think it's a better opportunity for our programming in grades 2 through 5. We've talked about this at other meetings where we've had special education discussions on what type of possibilities there would be if we had a same location for grades 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. And I know that Mary Brule, our Director of Student Services, is going to get more into that when she gets up to speak. But we've had a lot of different conversations about that and the possibilities that would be there for that group of students, which would be really neat. Also, a larger site here at the Wheelock School will provide much more opportunity for outdoor learning. So when you talk about outdoor learning, it really got highlighted last year. Outdoor learning, if you were at Dale Street at all last year during a very troubling time, to go outside and watch these kids learn outside and the smiles on their faces and what the teachers are doing was absolutely fabulous. We have something called the Walking Classroom at Dale Street. That's a grant-funded program where we have, for anybody that's my age, they're kind of like almost like Walkman back in the day. And what they have is all educational programs on there. So what the students can do is they can be in class, the teacher can do a mini lesson, and then what happens is the teachers go outside to pair in with our wellness. They can listen for about 15 minutes as they walk around, and then the teacher will meet back with them outside to kind of recap what happened, and then go in and continue an activity in class or outside. There, right now, Arrow Street has done a really great job here at this site to create a walking trail, which keeps them away from any type of street or anything like that, so the kids can benefit from that. Also, our physical education, we have a great wellness program here at in the Medfield Public Schools. And again, we do have a good sized field at our current location. But again, to have the fields out there that we will have, along with all those soccer fields that will be out there, allows us to have multiple classes out there at a time. And that would be a wonderful thing, because sometimes the scheduling and having PE twice a week, sometimes we might have to have classes simultaneously, 2 different teachers doing those classes, but it will allow us much more real estate to do that and offer kids different opportunities. One thing that I notice, and I always do when I come over to meet with Mrs. Caulfield or the students at Wheelock, is the Victory Garden. And I hear all about the Victory Garden from the kids in grades 2 and 3 when they come over. And it's one of the things, Mr. Grenham, do we have a Victory Garden? Do we have all that? And we don't have one. There wasn't one before we came. I've had several teachers in the last couple of years try to make gardens in different areas, but because of the fact that the field is used specifically between the Memorial School and the Dale Street School, you know, for freshman baseball or 8th grade field hockey, we just don't have the space there in there. So the opportunity to have that Victory Garden be a program that's grades 2 through 5 would be just a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Also, one of the teachers had mentioned at our last meeting, which I wasn't even thinking about, is composting. You know, a couple of the teachers, again, have tried composting at Dale Street, and they have a small area where they try to do it. But again, it kind of boxes them in. We just don't have the real estate to do something like that. And the last thing about the outdoor classrooms, I think that is really important to note is with the new science standards, okay, if you look at the science and engineering standards, a lot of them around grades 4 and 5 deals with rocks and minerals, the ecosystem, earth surfaces. So to have people go outside, and I think we all know that when the studies all show that when the kids are outside, they're engaged, empowered, they're doing hands-on things, they're more apt to internalize and go deeper with those than being in a classroom and reading it in a book. So the more opportunity that we can have, and I believe that this site here at the Wheelock site offers us much more real estate to have all of those outdoor opportunities. Another thing that I think about and worry about, to be honest with you, is the disruptions. Building the new elementary school here at the Wheelock site is going to create minimal disruptions for students. I think about often that if we were build the site, you know, either on the same stamp that we're on now, or in between the current Dale Street School and the Memorial School, I think about how kids are going to be disrupted. They're going to be learning in modulars. There might not be a cafeteria for some of the time. And I just feel for these kids because that's not a way to learn, one. But two, a lot of the kids that are going to be coming through there are the same students who were impacted this year through a pandemic and didn't get a chance to learn fully for almost a year and a quarter at the school. So I think that that disruption piece is a really, really important one for me, not only as a principal, but as a father having kids going through a school. And lastly, I think that the supports that we can offer the Wheelock School, we've already started engaging in conversations with Mrs. Caulfield, the principal, and offering things such as OT and PT. And for people that might not know what those are, that's occupational therapy and physical therapy, and to offer equipment, state-of-the-art equipment for students that are 8 years old, let's say, in 2nd or 3rd grade, is going to be very similar to the equipment that the kids that are 9 years old and 10 years old are using. So right now we could do a similar thing with Memorial and it could work. But I do think that the kids that are 5 and 6 year old would use a little bit different equipment than the kids are a little bit older. But I think that the music spaces that would be here would be very beneficial for our kids in 2nd and 3rd grade. And I also think the gymnasium, it's going to be something that's used throughout the town. But I really believe that the kids at Wheelock, when they have the exposure to the new elementary school and they're here at this site and they're playing soccer on the weekends, that transition, I'll get back to the original point, that transition is going to be, this is kind of their home, and this area is going to be their home for 4 years. And I think that's really, really important. Now I'll talk about the teachers, and all that stuff could impact the teachers as well, but I'm trying to break it down just to make it, you know, as clear as I might need it broken down. But as far as the teachers, it's going to offer them much more opportunity for effective collaboration. We do whatever we can as principals and an administrative team to get the teachers together as much as possible. But the fact of the matter is, one of the problems in education that always has been is the problem of time. And we like to make sure that our kids are getting the most out of our teachers. So we have a certain amount of PD days that they can try to meet. But I think having an opportunity where they could have lunch together, they might have specials at the same time that they could walk over and be together. That collaboration time about, okay, I use this effective strategy with this student. Have you tried this? They try to do it on the phone right now. They call on the weekends, they email. But I think having that effective way that they could just walk over after school and be with somebody within a 3 to 5 minute walk over and they're having that conversation is much more doable than getting in the car and driving over somewhere. I also think that it's a much better opportunity for staff to share resources. Again, there's a lot of resources that Holly Caulfield, the principal of the Wheelock School, talks about here that we use at the Dale Street as well. So I think it would be an opportunity for us to share resources and also share staff. I think one thing, I just was looking at the scheduling today, and a music teacher I was just thinking about who's going to be going between 2 buildings. And then we have another music teacher that's going to be going between the 2 buildings next year. So I think sharing staff, moving back and forth. I was just talking to Mary Brule about one of the special education staff members who works in multiple buildings. Wouldn't that be great and time effective if she was able to work, if possible, with 4 or 5 kids spread between grades 2 and 5 on a specific content skill area in the morning in one place. So I think that that opens up a lot of opportunities for us. And I think the last thing that I'll address is that the curriculum planning, when you're looking at the mass frameworks, a lot of the frameworks, not all, but a lot of the frameworks are written 3 through 5. So I think the opportunity to have that planning, to have that consistency, and also making sure that we're, divvying up where it's best fit for our students in grades 3 through 5 would be best for our students and best for our teachers. And I think the last thing that I'll say is that I'm very proud of the process and working with Left Field and Arrow Street. And I think that working on the educational plan was one of the best things that I've done in my career. But I really appreciate the process where we worked on the educational plan on what was going to be best for the students in Medfield. And then we decided, okay, what location would that be in? We didn't look at a location and try to squeeze a school in that we needed. We said, what would be best for our students and the students for the next 50 to 75 years here in Medfield? And we built the best educational plan that we could possibly do. And then we let the committee take a look at multiple areas where they thought that to get everything we needed in the plan, and they came up with the Wheelock site. So I'm really happy with that process that they came through, and I really believe that the area here at the Wheelock School opens, the most doors and creates the most opportunities, for our students moving forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mary Brule, who's our Director of Student Services.
Thank you very much, Steve. Oh, sorry. That's okay, either way. So as Steve said, I'm Mary Brule, the Director of Student Services. I'm new to the community conversations, not new to the conversation. As Steve was kind of mentioning, we've had so many great opportunities to provide feedback, to write up an educational plan, to discuss what we think is really best in the interest of students, and to make sure that that's kind of paramount in our conversations and in our plans. And I am here today to just kind of speak to some of those. Many of these Steve just mentioned, but I'll kind of focus in a little bit more on students that are supported by individualized education plans and trying to help understand why the benefits are even greater for those students. So first, just so people are kind of aware of the numbers of students that we're looking at. This can fluctuate at any time of year. So if you're kind of looking at September, if you're looking at March, students come on a IEP throughout the year. Some students come off of an IEP. These are the numbers that we report at the end of the year. So this is the end of the year for the 2020-2021 school year. We had 16 students in grade 2, 32 students in grade 3, 28 students in grade 4, and 25 students in grade 5. Again, these are students that are directly supported by IEPs. We do have students that are supported by a variety of other support plans, but these are just the numbers for individualized education plans. For staff-wise, just an understanding of how many staff we have between Wheelock and Dale Street right now. We have 7 special education teachers, 2 speech language pathologists, 2 school psychologists, 1.5 guidance counselors. We have 1 physical therapist that is split across the district. We have a 0.6 occupational therapist at Wheelock, and then we have 1 occupational therapist that is split between Dale Street, Blake, and the high school. We have 1 BCBA that's split between Wheelock and Dale. We have 2 nurses in a given year that is not a pandemic. So this year we had more than that, but for typical years, we have 1 nurse at each building, and we have 1 educational team leader that is kind of supporting the special education programming and running IEP meetings that is split between Wheelock and Dale as well. That's just an understanding of the staff and the students, because I think sometimes we live and breathe this. We know exactly what numbers we're thinking about, the people that we're thinking about, and it's not known to everyone else. So I just wanted to kind of start with that knowledge before I get into some understanding about, yes. Yeah.
You want to talk about what Unit A is?
Sure. I know I use a lot of acronyms, and I try as much as I can to spell them out. So feel free, raise your hand anytime. I'm not offended, and I appreciate it. So for Unit A, those are our teaching staff and students that are on the Unit A contract. So this does not count, in addition, our teaching assistants and behavior technicians that we also have, that are also, we have some at Wheelock and some at Dale. So it does not take into account all of the support personnel that we also have and could not run programming without. These were just looking at the Unit A contract positions. And a BCBA is a board certified behavior analyst. And those are specific people who are working with students both on education plans and not, that may have behaviors and need supports to kind of look at the best way to address those behaviors. Some of the students are developed functional behavior analysis that will lead into a behavior plan that might support those students. Some students, the BCBAs are just consulting on, helping teachers to have some strategies to help work with them, doing observations to kind of support student support team. They often will sit in on those SST or student support team meetings. So if a student may be having difficulty in the classroom and is a student that can't sit down in their chair and they're trying to think about ways, it might be a time that we would bring in a BCBA to have some conversations and say, well, let's look at why they're getting out of their chair. What's the function of that behavior? Are they getting up because they can't sit still? Are they getting up whenever you ask them a question and they need to get away? Are they getting up because they are far away from the thing that they want? So kind of trying to look at an environment and make a decision as to what might be the reason that they're engaging in that behavior. So we have two BCBAs across the district, and we have one that's split with Wheelock and Dale. And those are kind of the understandings of the staffing. Any other confusing acronyms that I've used so far? Fabulous. So in looking at some of the kind of benefits that we can think about, again, as Steve really spoke to a lot of these, which is wonderful because you can see that things that may support students that are supported by an IEP are oftentimes many of the things that are going to support all students. And really in the Department of Student Services, that's my biggest focus, is trying to make sure that we're looking at all students and how can we support students and how can we effectively build what we're doing for students to be better and to help students grow. So one of the things is those shared staff. As I said, some of the staff already are shared between Wheelock and Dale, so not having a commute across town is always beneficial. But sometimes even having the ability to say, you know, we have two speech language pathologists. These are grades that are contiguous while the Memorial School and Dale Street School are right next to each other. A lot of times people are focused on early childhood versus kind of those elementary years. So having the two schools that have 4 years that are right in line with each other allow staff that are familiar with that population, because there is a big difference sometimes between a kindergartner and a 5th grader, but a 3rd grader and a 5th grader are, you know, presenting in similar ways and might have similar strategies. So speech language pathologists might have skills that are very strong in one specific area that they might be able to do across caseload between the two schools because they're familiar age groups and they have specific honed in skills that they would be able to have. As Steve had mentioned, being able to do something like a physical therapy group, having a kindergartner and a 4th grader joined together for a physical therapy group doesn't quite feel like the best setup for either student. But having a 3rd grader and a 5th grader, or having 4th and a 5th, you know, a 2nd and a 4th grader come together allows for us to kind of spread that and make sure that we have different groups. Many times we hear feedback that some of the students that are receiving therapy feel as though they're always with the same students because they are, you know, within those 2 years, kind of moving from building to building, and there aren't those opportunities to spread that. So that's another thing that helps with those shared staff, is that we can also have created new groups. Another thing is talking about those programming opportunities. While the programs right now, we are able to holistically support students, and we know that we are doing the best for students, it gives an opportunity to have even more specialized programs. We could have one at Wheelock and one at Dale Street and still allow the students to have access to their general education teachers, their cafeterias, their gyms, but have more specified programming that we can't do directly right now because of the makeup of the school system. And we wouldn't be able to do at the Memorial and Dale Street program. Many times when we kind of talk about these benefits, people mention that Blake and the high school are on the same campus and we don't have programming that is shared, or that, you know, we don't have these kind of groups that we're talking about. And when you really think about the differences between 2 to 5 and 6 through 12, inherently it kind of becomes a little bit more obvious why we might not have that built-in programming and sharing between middle school and high school. The overarching model of how the middle school is run, they have clusters, they have, you know, very specific kind of model. Students are still accessing recess. Things like that are at the middle school, while when you're getting to the high school, they have a rotating schedule. No one is taking the same classes. Kind of the model of things is very different. And even the way that we're teaching students differs when you're in middle school versus high school. While many of the strategies, many of the educational models, many of the standards are set up for that kind of 2 through 5 that are similar and that allow for programming and allow for these opportunities more inherently than it would in a 6 through 12 kind of way. That's not to say that we can continue to build on our partnerships between Blake and the high school, but it is to say that it is easier and more feasible to kind of create this programming that more cohesively supports students in a 2 through 5 model. Another thing that we think about is that increased communications. As Steve said, communication about transitions is one of the most difficult things. The day I walked into Medfield, I think even before the day I walked into Medfield, I heard about the difficulties in transitions and how it's even harder for a student that's supported by an IEP, a student that is trying to think about, you know, who's my next service provider? I've never seen them. I haven't found them. We every year try to think about different ways of how do we cohesively make sure that new teams understand who a student is and how they are going to be successful in the most meaningful of ways. We have time for teachers to talk. We try to arrange as much as we possibly can. But when their buildings are across town, it's hard to be able to kind of naturally create those. And having those opportunities where we could say, as Steve said, you know, they have a common period. There's a common planning time for special education teachers 2 through 5 would be an incredible thing for us to be able to do. Our speech language pathologists and psychologists try to find time right now to work together, you know, maybe once every other month. But this would allow for them to potentially find those times easier and to be able to do it more naturally. That's not to say that teacher schedules are busy, and we know that. I'm not saying that by putting Dale Street at Wheelock, you know, teachers are magically going to be collaborating and consultating all day long, but there's a more natural ability for that. And there's ability for the two principals to work together to help create those times more meaningfully and more naturally. Another thing is thinking about shared facilities and materials. We have a lot of specialized materials that we are purchasing for students, and this would allow us to you know, make sure that we have those that are able to be shared. Again, students that are in 2 through 5 have similar sizes, similar needs, and this allows us to even kind of broaden what we have and some of those opportunities that we have. You know, Wheelock School has these amazing motor room that people always talk about. When they moved to Dale Street School, they're referencing the motor room. You know, do you have the motor room? Dale Street doesn't have the motor room right now, but Dale Street may not need to have the motor room because Wheelock has it right next door, and students and staff can kind of share accordingly. Another thing to think about, as Steve mentioned, are those outside facilities and outside supports. The more outside hands-on material for students that with disabilities, the better. The more hands-on opportunities for all students, the better. But for students with disabilities, a lot of times they need those multimodal approaches to learning. And by multimodal, I mean, you know, not just having kind of people talking at them, or even playing with, you know, different cubes and utilizing materials that all teachers, students have within the classroom, but even being able to go outside to the Victory Garden to smell something can trigger something that can support a student in learning, to be able to feel different plants. You know, I used to work at Perkins School for the Blind, and we had an amazing greenhouse that was one of the most incredible ways that we help students to engage and to understand a lot about the world around them. And I think having those outdoor spaces and the ability to kind of create so much within this environment for students that are able to access that can do a world of good. Another thing to think about is that, with the same grades right now, if you kind of think about it, these will be, as I said, sometimes people feel like they are pigeonholed into, like, I always am with the same students. I always have to go to lunch bunch with the same group. This 2 through 5 group will be the same group that will be in 9 through 12 together. It's the same group that 3 through 5 will be in 6 through 8 together. So these are social opportunities that they will continue to have throughout their years. They'll still have the autonomy of kind of the Wheelock School and the Dale Street School, but it allows for more of those social opportunities for students that will create opportunities further down the line as well. So it's not as though, this is their only time that these 4 grades will be together. They will continue to be able to do that. And we'll be able to look at a wider group of students to say, we want to pull a lunch group today. And there's a student who is kind of presenting in this way and really could benefit from a student that's presenting in this way. And we have that opportunity because we have students that are age appropriate that we could bring together. And so with that, that also allows, we kind of talk about the Dale Street students and how they're going off into middle school and they're getting bigger and they're, starting to develop their own autonomy. And with that, they can also start to create some of those mentoring, especially for students that, may be supported by an IEP, to help them to mentor those students to kind of grow some of their own autonomy and to be leaders in that way. Right now, they do have social opportunities with the memorial students and they do book readings and things like that, I know, and sometimes they help out at field day, which are wonderful opportunities. But I think by having students that are within, 4 years of each other, the older students grow in their leadership opportunities, while the younger students really get to understand and grow themselves through the mentorship. So those are just some of the things that, we've been thinking about and that have been a big part of our conversations in this plan. We just really want to think about the ways that we can support students across the board in as many ways possible. And I think by moving Dale Street to Wheelock, we have so many more opportunities for special education that help to grow the programs, help to grow the practitioners, help to grow the collaboration, and help to grow the consistency and hopefully transition and make sure that students feel the support and feel successful as a result. I don't know who I'm passing it to, so I'm gonna, yeah.
And over the course of your career, have you seen ebbs and flows and need to change for that? Or is it just because of the specialties that the demand for space just grows?
Sure.
Maybe
Can you ask it again? I don't think I understand the question. Sorry.
Boss.
I guess out of curiosity, just because I get, the trending of, as we continue to personalize the experience, and how does that spill over into the special ed programming that you're providing? Are you seeing, I know we're seeing an increase in special ed, service cases, but overall, other types of services that we're providing decreasing in the requirement of space or increasing in the kinds of requirement of more space, the type of spaces that we need, I guess that's when people are asking me about the special ed services, are we doing more of it in the classroom, or is it more of it that we need these specialists that you put up there need a space to conduct the work that they're doing?
I think it's a little of both. I think we're really trying to look more at ways to provide services within the classroom and to consult with, general education teachers as well, so that everything isn't pulling students out and delivering a service directly outside with very little follow through within the classroom. So I think we're trying to build some more models of inclusive supports. And this is only my start of my 4th year, but in the 3 years that I've been here, I've I've seen a growth in that, which to me is exciting because that helps to foster an understanding of those needs across the board. So it's not that you receive your kind of occupational therapy only outside the classroom, but the OT might come into the classroom and support in that way. That's not to say, however, that sometimes we need to be able to pull a student out to directly work with them for that skill building so that they then can bring it into the classroom to help to generalize that. So there's kind of an increase in the need for both spaces. Sometimes students need a quiet space. Sometimes students need direct one-on-one intention in order to gain that skill. But then to assume that they're going to be able to take that skill and bring it into the classroom without those kind of direct supports negates a lot of what the needs are as well. So I think that what we're recognizing is there's a significant need for both of those. And we want to balance the need to make sure that we're not fully teaching a skill in isolation and not helping the student to learn how to generalize it and how to increase their own independence with that. And helping other staff to also recognize how to support students. So it's not just that one provider can do it, it's a variety of them. Sure. Any other questions or thoughts? Oh, yeah.
I don't see.
Can always email also if things pop up. I'm happy to answer or talk about anything. Yes. Colin, he has the microphone right behind you. Sorry. Here, we could, is it working?
On the shared staff. So are we looking at, so when this school is projected to open in 2024, does the shared staffing mean cost savings with regard to not needing as many staff? And what does that do to the caseloads to the individual special ed staff members?
I would say that in terms of cost savings, I can't imagine that we're not going to have to hire new staff because of the increased enrollment. So, we'll probably have the existing staff we have now and then have to hire additional staff that may go between buildings. But, if that enrollment projection comes true, then we're definitely going to need additional staffing in those positions.
Would the staffing be comparable to the, I guess, incremental increase that we would have in the number of students?
Right, that would be, and I think in terms of caseloads, it wouldn't necessarily be changing the caseloads, it would be changing kind of the makeup of that caseload.
Okay.
So instead of saying, you can only support second and third graders because you are at Wheelock, you may be able to support second through fifth graders in a variety of different ways because your specialty happens to be students with AAC devices, and you're a speech pathologist that's very comfortable with something like that. And so you may take, the AAC device kind of piece of speech language pathology and be the focus of that for second through fifth, and the other speech pathologists might be able to focus on others. So it allows us to kind of each year look at the needs of the students and the skills and the fortes of each of the staff and help them to really each get the most for what they need and what they are able to provide.
Yeah. So is there, with the shared staff on special education, is there, from a developmental standpoint, are there limitations in terms of what staff can or cannot do? I'm wondering because I took a tour of a grade K-8 building in May, and I talked to the staff there about the special ed because they are a long time K-8 configured building. And they were saying that they in their building, they cannot share their special ed staff beyond just 2 grades because of various developmental needs or that they grow out of, the younger students grow out of the old, when they get older, they grow out of the special services
Yeah.
and they need a different level. So I'm just curious about.
I would say, yeah, a K-8 is a wide spectrum and depends on the staff person's comfortability, knowledge base, experience, past and present. I have a lot of staff members who have started as elementary, kind of learned a great deal, moved into the middle school world, moved into the high school world. I think it's all in what the staff are comfortable with and able to do and what their actual knowledge base is. I would never say that, a staff is not able to work with students K-8 because I think it's all in their experience and all in what they know. I do think some people prefer certain age ranges. Most elementary schools, are either K-4, K-5, 1-5, which typically have one provider for special education services. So typically something like a 2-5 range would not be something that would be unheard of and would actually be more of the norm in most schools than something that would not be. So I've never heard of staff that kind of say, I only feel comfortable with 2 specific grades other than maybe the pre-KK because it's a little bit different developmentary. I think 2-5, by the time you're in that area, especially for related service providers, it's typically the same understanding of things that they feel comfortable within that range.
And I actually should clarify because this was in there, it was actually K-6 and they actually have 2 different sort of cohorts and younger, they have it separated and they were specifically talking about in their sort of middle elementary levels. So
yeah, exactly. I think a lot of times that pre-KK group sometimes is one of those, but at most of the related service providers that I've worked with personally, professionally, that I'm friends with, that are in the elementary level are typically in a K-5, K-4 kind of building and are able to make sure that they feel comfortable with that. Typically, most of the programs that are helping to create that also generally go towards, an elementary focus, a middle school focus, or a high school focus.
Right. And then also just a quick follow-up question, then I'll give this to Tracy. On the collaboration between teachers and between grades, you had mentioned, I think Steve, you had said, that after school they'd be able to, wouldn't have the travel time between schools. So are you looking at more collaboration time after school or during the school day?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, is that the?
No, what I mean by that is that right now we'll have meetings after school currently within the contract that's stated where maybe special education teachers will be meeting with what we call consults. But again, those teachers could do the same thing. So if school gets out at 3 o'clock or something, the contractual hours might go till 3:30, give or take some minutes. So they could just walk over there, but we're not looking to add on time for the day or anything like that. But again, teachers have a specific amount of time they're here. So if I'm having trouble with, a student, and all of a sudden you're a 3rd grade teacher, I could walk over here when I'm here at 8:10 in the morning. Our kids aren't coming in till 8:25 or 8:30. Hey, I'm struggling with these type of things. What'd you do? So I think it would allow the time before school, 15, 20 minutes, lunchtime, if it was a consistent lunchtime that they had between the 2 grades, maybe not, special times, and then after school. So it just opens up a lot of possibilities. As I said, now the teachers we have now are amazing. So they're doing it, at night, they're calling, they're doing it on the weekends. Sometimes they will drive over if they're going to be here later, but not looking to extend the day or anything like that.
Yeah, and I think I just know I'm just drawing on my experience from being on the elementary school day committee, where the elementary teachers really, they talked about the struggle with not having enough time in the school day. Even to have their own lunch. Yeah. So, they're struggling to find time. And I think even with the addition of the half hour, the question is, where is there opportunities for them to collaborate during the school day, given the crazy schedules that they're dealing with and, the specials don't overlap.
Yeah, so right now, currently, we have common planning time. Right. So we have, it's a really important thing that all the teachers do that. We build it into the school day, where not every school does that in the different towns. But what happens is they do, right now, the teachers have a specific amount of time for lunch and like I said, those planning periods. So they might have what we would call a special during the course of the day. And those specials are going to go on the same segments between the 2 schools. They do currently now. So you might sit there and have 2 teachers that happen to have the same special time that if they had to meet. And also, I think, what Holly and I are trying to do too, if it was any type of situation that was really necessary, we would, I can speak for Holly, I think we would go in and we'd teach in the teacher's classroom so that if one teacher did have a prep time, so that they could meet up and talk for a few minutes about a student if they needed to. So yeah, that we already have built-in common planning time, not only for general ed classroom teachers, but for special education teachers and for all specialists as well.
Right. But it seems like it's just really grade level collaboration at this point, right? In terms of between the grades.
Yes and no. Yeah, it's a grade level common planning time right now, but within the grade level common planning time, we have our math and literacy specialists that are in there. We also have our library media specialists, and then our technology integration specialists are in there as well.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Mary, yeah, thank you. Can you talk about the limitations of the Dale Street building as it is now, as far as how it relates to special ed?
Sure. I think, the Dale Street building right now, we know a lot of the limitations and that it's an older building and has a lot of limitations with that. So, even in terms of kind of conference room and space for meetings for special education, there's not an ideal place. It's kind of, maybe a different place each year. It's not consistent. It is, as warm and inviting as possible for family members. But when it isn't something consistent and something that we always have and kind of dress up and make it feel better, that's kind of one thing. And that's the only time that parents are coming in for meetings. So for me, that's a really important opportunity, is to make sure that we have something that parents feel comfortable coming into and feel welcomed in as well. Another thing is just with treatment spaces, physical therapy does not have its own space within the Dale Street building. Our physical therapist is incredible and thinks outside the box in ways that I have, never seen. She is up on this, I have observed and taken part in sessions with her while she's up on the stage with giant balls and hula hoops and playing games in the gym that, are incredible to see, but, definitely could be better if we had a space that was hers with her equipment that she could store, that she wasn't kind of, moving and bringing back and forth with herself. In terms of kind of special education services, there's no really, if they are pulling a student out, they really have to bring them down to their special education room. There's no opportunity to kind of say, as I said, an ideal situation would be that we're going to kind of work on with a student on a skill and then be able to bring it back into the classroom. That becomes harder when you have to work on the skill with the student, up the stairs, down the stairs, up the hall, down the hall in that classroom, and then try to race back again to get to their general education classroom. While I think, the opportunities with the building that's been designed have spaces everywhere that allow for kind of that pull out, direct instruction, and ability to get back. So for me, as somebody that was a teacher, that's so exciting. I, used to find it difficult with my own students to be able to kind of do that. I just want to take you out of this classroom for 5 minutes so that I can do something and then get you right back in here. And when there aren't those spaces and opportunities, it becomes hard. So I think that's another big thing that Dale Street does not currently have that would be available. I think, as I said, those outdoor spaces are limited with the current Dale Street school without, kind of the danger of being right on the road. And I think the new models would allow for that. I think, in terms of just new and kind of state-of-the-art types of things that we want to be able to bring into the classrooms and the support, we don't have those spaces available within the Dale Street school. So I think there's a lot of opportunities and growth. So for me, when we started the educational plan, I remember Dr. Marsden coming and just saying, like, dream big, put it all in there. And, we'll scale back if we have to. And it was really wonderful to kind of sit together as a team for special education and say, okay, we're dreaming big. Like, what can we think about? What would we want? What would be amazing to be able to bring to the students of Medfield? So for me, I think so much of that is within this plan, and that's what's exciting for me.
Teresa, even the classrooms, the existing Dale Street classrooms are, right around 700 square feet. In the new building would be 900 square feet. So every classroom would be 200 square feet larger, so just having that space to work with kids, and not to Mary and her group, the vision of what Mary and her group did, and put that together in the education plan, and then putting it into design. So we're really excited about the way it came up.
Segue, sorry. I just want to say for myself that I had kids, children in special ed at certain levels. That was many years ago. And then I would talk to parents in other school districts, and their kids had such amazing everything. And I always felt really gypped, that my kids never got in services in the classroom. My daughter for math was pulled out into a hallway at that time because it was a bigger class size. My son didn't get what he needed. They didn't have a guidance counselor. There was no office if there was one. So I think for those of us who are more veterans of the school system, we've really suffered in that building, and a new building provides a tremendous opportunity that I wouldn't even have known existed if I had not told my tale of woe to my friends in different school districts to see what they have. And a lot of that is limited by the fact that that building is so old. So I think it sounds great, but I think it's hard for people. I see a lot of the younger parents, my neighbor, Katie, to understand unless you've been through it, how dire and antiquated the services are dictated by the space constraints that we have. So I just want to say that because I think it's important if you've been through it. Thank you.
Again, any questions, feel free to email.
The perfect segue for the architect. We wanted to talk first about the process.
Is it on now? Yes? Okay, you can hear me. Okay, great. We wanted to talk a little bit about the process and where we are with the process. So these next couple slides just shows, Tim, if you could go to the next slide. Perfect. You may have seen this before. I don't expect you to read this, but through the MSBA process, there's several modules that we need to go through. And we've gone through module 1, which is eligibility. Back in 2017 is when the district first sent their statement of interest to the MSBA. So this is in 2017. And here we are now in module 4, which is schematic design. And we are about to finish schematic design. We just sent a draft of the schematic design documents to the school building committee for their review. We're waiting for their comments and questions. We'll incorporate any comments that they may have, and we'll finalize it to be submitted to the MSBA by September 8th. Tim, you could go to the next slide. And that just shows where we are currently. And then you'll see that there's several more modules, which is module 5, which is funding for the project. Once the town goes through that and agrees to the project funding, module 6 is where we get into detailing the building design. And that takes several months. Soon after that, module 7, construction begins. And the thought is that construction could begin in the summer of 2022 and would take about approximately 2 years to construct. So by summer of 2024, the building will be ready. The school opening would be 2024. So that's what you see here in this timeline. Thank you.
Just where is it if the town votes on it? Just graphically here.
The town vote, so that happens before project funding. So it's between, after we submit to the MSBA, they go through their review process, which is about 4 weeks or more. And so during that time in the fall, the town will be voting. So there will be a special town vote. Thank you, Tim. So we wanted to,
I was noticing in the statutes that there's a project scope and budget conference that takes place between the project team and MSBA. And that project scope and budget conference that takes place the statutes actually state that certain people should be invited to attend that, even though it's not an open meeting. Selectmen, mayors, different people at different levels. So my question is, do we know yet who from our district will be attending that project scope and budget conference with MSBA? And who should be there?
Yes, the MSBA requires the superintendent as representative of the district and the principal as representative of the school to be there, as well as a chief executive officer of the town to be involved, as well as the representatives from the school building committee. Those are the key people with that MSBA follows throughout the process and asks that they be involved in all of the major meetings with MSBA.
Thank you. Any other questions before I move on to the next slide? Thank you. So we wanted to go through some of the site and building features and how that benefits the educational program. Next slide. Thank you. So what you see here is an illustrative landscape plan. You may have seen this already. We presented these before to the school building committee, but we wanted to just highlight, can you hear me? Thank you. We wanted to highlight the outdoor areas that are for the students, active play, as well as outdoor learning. There's a lot of opportunities that we had found on this site with the Wheelock School, with the existing sites, the existing natural resources, and we were able to really design the site so that it serves both schools really well. Not just drop off and bus loops and parking, but we felt that what the site has to offer to the students, positioning the outdoor play areas, the outdoor classrooms, the walking paths that Steve had mentioned with the walking classrooms. So these are all opportunities that we're trying to benefit from this site, and that we feel that the students and the teachers will benefit greatly from. It was also mentioned the Victory Garden for Mary, being able to go out there and smell the herbs or the vegetables, but there's also a rain garden. So part of site planning and stormwater, there's a rain garden where there's also opportunities for science experiments or just observing nature. So there's a lot of that happening on this site that we are seeing and really thinking that it can be a benefit. Next slide. Ooh. Oh, well, I could pause here for questions. Any questions? Site? Nope. Tim, can you advance to the next slide? Thank you. These are some renderings that we've done of the new school. And what you see is actually overlaid an aerial photo that we had taken. So the trees, the foliage that you see here are all existing. What you'll notice is that the existing soccer and lacrosse field that's directly behind the Wheelock School, that's where the new building is sitting. However, we are building as part of the new school, a new athletic field. It's a little bit off to the page, but it's on the right of the page. That's going to be adjacent to the other existing soccer fields. Some of the building features that you'll notice here is that this building will have solar PV panels on the roof. We are targeting the building to be a net zero energy building. And so energy consumption, conservation, this is also going to be a LEED building, meaning that it will be a sustainable building. It's going to meet specific criteria that's part of the USGBC, which is the US Green Building Council. So those things include not just energy, but water conservation, indoor air quality, high efficiency HVAC systems, and healthy materials, And there's a lot more that goes into it, and you'll learn more about that as we develop the project. Next slide. I talked a little bit about the site on the first slide there when we had the landscape plan, but some of the things that we also wanted to make sure that's always part of the design is the safety and security around the building, in the building. So having specific how the site is laid out in terms of parent drop off and the bus loop, and how that separation between the two, as well as safe and clear separations between vehicles and pedestrian, is all part of the site design that we're very mindful of, as well as clear views basically from the roadways to the main entrances, other entrances, and windows. You'll also notice, you'll see the bus loop, but there's also an emergency vehicular access route that circles the building. So in case of an emergency, whether it's fire or any other emergencies, police and fire can access the building on all sides. Next slide. This is a view of the front facade of the building, of the proposed building. And you'll notice a little canopy there. That is the main entry, the main door that goes into the building. And then in the foreground where you see the red brick, that is actually the band room right behind those walls. And some of the benefits that we think throughout from the very start of project to the very end are daylighting. So we understand that windows to all the learning spaces are very important. You've heard that it improves learning and it improves behavior. We found that to be very important. I had talked a little bit about indoor air quality, healthy materials, but also right sizing the classrooms. As mentioned, a 900 square foot classroom or approximately that is key in terms of having enough space for the targeted number of students per class. And also allowing small groups and breakout sessions to happen in class and not just outside of class. As Mary had talked about, having some of those special ed educational sessions happening in class, but also outside of class. And then I'd like to, oh, thank you. As you go through the front door, what we wanted to show you, these are some renderings that we have presented a couple weeks ago, or maybe a few weeks ago to the school building committee. These are of the interior. This is right when you walk through the door. The front lobby, you have a main corridor that takes you into the classroom wing. Next slide. This is a similar view, but your angle is rotated. So just imagine your camera view is rotated a little bit so that you have a view down the corridor to the classroom wing, but also down a secondary corridor that takes you to the wellness wing, which is where we have the gym, OTPT, and the cafeteria. Next slide. This is that same corridor, however, down the corridor and sort of turning around and looking back at the main entrance and the lobby. And you'll notice that there are opportunities throughout the building, for instance, at the front entrance where there's space for students and families to gather. We'll have opportunities where there'll be display cases for students' achievements. And the windows on the left there are into the media center. So as you enter the school, you have a nice presence of what's happening in the school with the media center, the band room, and the music room. Next slide. And this is a view of the band room. So I had mentioned the red brick. So these windows actually look out to the front of the school. And this band room can serve as one big room. It also has a partition so that in terms of music lessons, there could be 2 classrooms happening at the same time. It really allows for a lot of flexibility. And now back on the outside. So this is looking, Wheelock is behind you. So you're looking at the school. This is what we're calling the north facade or the north courtyard. And those big windows that you see right in the middle there, that takes you into the media center. And then the windows, the large windows just to the left of that, or sorry, to the right of that, those are the STE rooms or the STEM rooms. And beyond there is a learning common. And I'll show you a couple renderings of those on the interior. And here you have the media center. And that's that big window that I was just talking about. So that looks out onto Wheelock. Next slide. This is what we're calling the learning commons. Where we have the learning steers, and this really allows for flexibility in learning opportunities. And oh, thank you, Tim, I actually have water right here too. In a couple classrooms, 2 classrooms could actually gather on that learning stair and be able to have either a visiting teacher or presentations or activities happening right in this center. And the center is really where all the classrooms come together. So both the fourth graders and 5th graders on 2 floors can congregate into this space. Next slide. And then moving back outside the building, what you see here is that if you can imagine, if you're standing right where the playground is, what you see with the green and the blue, that's where the play structure would be. And then that's looking back at the building, and that glass window is where the cafeteria is. So there's recess before lunch. So you can imagine a group of students coming out to play, and then there's an entryway that takes you right into the cafeteria after recess. Next slide. And this takes you into the cafetorium, where it's right adjacent to the outdoor play area. The window beyond this view is would be a view out to looking south at the playground area. Within the cafeteria as well, there are lunch breakout spaces. As Mary had mentioned, there would be lunch bunches. So for small groups, they could gather into these smaller spaces that might be less loud or less crowded or less people, a quieter space for them to eat and meet with their peers. The lunch breakout spaces are also great because they're flexible spaces. So during other hours, aside from lunchtime, they can be utilized, whether it is for small groups or family meetings or other types of meetings, staff meetings as well. And this is really just a floor plan to show you how the classroom wing is set up. And it's set up in these, what we're calling pods, where we're creating these neighborhoods. So this is one floor where you'll notice that there's 3 neighborhoods that make up 13 classrooms of 1 grade. And surrounding that, the center is the learning commons. And you'll see in the purple, those are the small group rooms, the special education classes. So those are all support rooms to the classrooms. And this is, you may have seen this already. I won't go through it in too much detail, but this is the first floor plan. The orange being the cafeteria, the gymnasium in the light green. The red there is the admin. So that's right by the front entrance in the lobby. And you can see the main corridor that takes you down into the classroom wing. And I could stop here, pause here for questions. And this is of the 2nd floor.
I guess I can't emphasize enough the fact that what you just saw in those drawings is the vision that we created in our education. Our street took that, developed that for us.
So I think that's a real key piece, is that we had visioning sessions with staff members, with community members, with parents, with administrators, and got all their information and put this all together to help with our education plan. those visioning sessions really drove the design of the building. And what you see is what we, really what we envisioned the new school to be. So it's just what we had asked for. So thank you.
I would just say a comment. I mean, some of Mary's presentation, which I thought was great, where this really started to come alive.
To taste your own medicine.
I know, except I'm coming right in here.
Okay, right.
Thanks to them. So, and I know this room can hear me. But where it started coming to life for me is just seeing the two campuses or the two buildings together. It's the cup of coffee, you bump into each other. Sometimes the teachers may or may not want to speak to one another. But you're closer. It's just that much easier. So I think you were asking a little while ago, might it reduce the number that you need? My brain is it's going to make them a lot more effective, right? They're going to be, it's just natural. You're in the same campus day in and day out. And I mean, that was just, for me, as you folks continue to share the renditions of what we get, that's where I really started to appreciate this campus model and what it means. And it is something, again, I'm like lots of us, my kids aren't here either, but I'm really excited about what we're seeing here.
I guess the other piece too is it's this whole campus that we're talking about isn't just theory, right? Both Steve and I worked in another district that was set up very similar, where it was a campus model. We had an elementary school of a K to 3, and then a 4, 5, 6 behind it. And we got to see how the collaboration worked, how the teachers worked, the sharing of staff. We got to see it every day. So this isn't theory for us. We've actually seen it in action, and we saw it for 7 years together when we worked together in another district. It works really, really well. And we think that's why it's important, all the things we said earlier, important for kids to have that campus setting.
I would also say that I've seen that campus.
Jeff, I would say I've seen the campus in Rentham, and but to maximize the layout, I think that Aerostreet's done a great job on the site.
It's a much better site than
I was going
Rentham.
to say the site,
it's
yeah,
much
that
better.
site capability and making it feel like the buildings are actually like one almost.
Right. I just don't want folks to think that we're just, theorizing around this. We've actually seen it work and work really well.
Yeah, and I think this could just improve that. It would magnify that, just the way the positioning of the buildings are, how they kind of both front facing. They're and then just not to take away from the other schools in Rentham, I've visited them, but this scenario here, I just love the work they've done. And if people look at this and you think of yourself as being a child walking up into here on a regular basis for 4 years, you're going to know the entire campus because you've been there for 4 years, or you've been there for 2 years, and you're not going to be that transition to that other school is not going to be as dramatic as the others. So,
and Holliston has a similar model too with a campus setting.
Yeah, I was also going to say it's not always done as well. The Hopkinton campus is very separate in my mind. When you look at the Hopkinton campus as a district that decided to do almost all their schools as a campus, and just I don't feel it's as encompassing and community looking a feeling as this is.
Agreed.
Just a kind of follow up to more questions for Mary on, and it's really about the transition. Jeff, actually curious for Rentham, for the elementary schools that are together, what's the total population of students for all those schools together?
Both schools 1,900.
Probably a little lower than that. I think the pre-K through 3 school, I think was about a little over 700. And then
Oh, no, it was 14 together.
Yeah, and we
14,
had-
14 together.
And I think the Roderick, when I was there, was around 520, 550. So it was between 12 and 1,300.
Yeah, okay, so did they have a common drop-off, pickup, common for transportation purposes? Okay, were there any sensory issues with kids with that many students on a daily basis? I mean, it would seem to me that on a daily basis, you have kids transitioning with a lot more students.
How many kids were in that K to 6 you were visiting?
A lot, yeah,
It's there.
there were like
We didn't have
900.
much.
Yeah, can you say more? I don't understand sensory, like what you're,
Like overload because there's so many kids.
Yeah, exactly. That, like it was interesting reading through the educational plan and the PSR, and there was a lot said in the special education section about sensory issues and having basically, I'm not using the right terms, of decompression rooms, for kids to descend, so I guess I just question on a daily basis, when you have that many children arriving, departing, there's a daily transition issue versus a transition, transitions every 2 years. And not all transitions are bad. I mean, I think that's the other piece of it. Not all transitions are bad. And I think that it's just something that, in Hopkinton, actually, they're like rated, their elementary schools are rated like #1 in the state. So they're doing something right.
She is also.
Well, but I'm just saying, but I mean, I just don't think, I'm just curious about the daily transitions, because I know that in large schools, there's research that shows that environment can be overwhelming. And it's not just one building, it can be a campus model too.
Sure. I mean, I think one of the big things to kind of think about when you're thinking about that is that there's 2 different entrances to the buildings. And so, transportation will be, making sure that we're keeping that in mind as well when we're doing each of the entrances. And I think, what the way that students are entering into the buildings is very similar to how it is right now. I mean, the Memorial and Dale Street, when you're going into Dale Street, there are buses coming by going to Memorial. There's, so there's still there's streets right there that have traffic going back and forth with parents dropping off. There's significant amounts of parents. So I think that sensory piece is a big thing. I'm the one who put a lot about the, because as I said, I worked at Perkins School for the Blind in their deaf blind program. So I did a lot with some of the auditory pieces. And I think, when we were thinking about the classrooms and the development, we did put a lot about those natural built-in abilities, because as a special education department, when we have students that have those sensory needs, we have to put that in individually. And how great would it be to kind of have those in there preemptively, because sometimes we don't know students that might have a sensitivity to those sounds. So that was why I put a lot of that within there. But I think with drop-offs and pickups, I don't think that it would be a significant change in kind of the noise and sounds. And I think the procedures that what I've seen, if anything, the procedures that have been put in for COVID this year, just with lineups and class meetups and where we're doing it and how we're doing it to assure that students were separated. I think, if there was an increase in number of students, I have the utmost confidence in the staff of these buildings that they create routines that are supportive, familiar, and helpful for students, to make sure that the students feel really comfortable in the way that drop-offs and pickups occur, so that if there is a sensory piece, those routines are so thought out and built in that students kind of have the understanding and the expectation and the familiarity, because it's 4 years of the same kind of routine, same understanding of those procedures. So I think actually that can help sometimes some of it as well.
And then I guess the other question I had too is, we on the sort of a separate issue on the equity issue with regard to access to extracurriculars and things like that. I mean, the reality is that this site is further away from downtown and further away from our affordable housing communities, where we have a lot of children that are now currently in walking distance to Dale Street. So it's very difficult for them when they come over here without an afternoon bus to be able to stay after school for the curriculars after school, with all the, the I forget what they're called, that they do after school.
I'm just not clear on that. Like, why is that?
I'm not clear why that's an issue.
So if you have a child who needs to stay, who lives over further away and needs to stay after school for extra help, or wants to attend one of the clubs after school, the extracurriculars that they have, and there's no bus home, then how are we going to provide the transportation for them?
So I don't understand why their parents can't pick them up.
What if the parents depend on buses?
Right. I just think you're making a huge assumption there, I think.
What you're doing is
I think you're making a huge assumption.
you're possibly denying the opportunity for them to be able to walk home.
Just to clarify, right now at Dale Street, we have extracurriculars after school in both the fall and the spring. We also have different clubs, whether it's something out of our library media center. Our morning news gets run sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon. And also we have Chromebook captains, which I'm really proud of. I will tell you without breaking confidentiality that we have kids in all those different capacities from low income. All of those kids get picked up. So we've never had kids that have walked home I'm in the office pretty much every day till 5, but when those clubs end at 4:15, we also have people that stay after for extra help if they need that. But none of those kids, at least in my 6 years that I've been there, we don't have kids that walk, you know. I'd say once in a great while would an older brother or sister of a non-low income that would live in the neighborhood come and walk the kid home, they may. But we don't have kids, you know, I'd say close to 100% of our kids are involved in after school sports, which Kim Fraser does a wonderful job with. We have a lot of participants. And then, like I said, our other clubs that are there do that. I think the other side of it that I see, because I'm walking out, I'm also familiar with MAP. So I see MAP there, and none of the kids walk home from MAP. They all get picked up from MAP as well. I don't have the numbers for that, but I can just tell you from a guy that leaves at 5 o'clock and parks in the same lot that they get picked up in, that they all get picked up too. I'm never driving home and seeing kids that I'm familiar with going to MAP walking home in the neighborhood.
Yeah, I think Matt's a little different because
It might be.
Six
I was-
o'clock and people are coming home from work and
Yeah,
picking their kids up
Yeah,
after work.
but I was just comparing it. That's not in our program, but again, that's just the actual numbers from us. So we have kids that are from, you know, that aren't involved in free and reduced lunch, and we have kids that be involved in free and reduced lunch, but none of the kids have to walk anywhere in the neighborhood after those clubs or classes.
I just want to add.
Team, there's a person online who has a question. They've had their hand raised pretty patiently. If you want to take an online question, and Larry can promote them if that's okay.
Family that is struggling. I know for a fact that your guidance counselors refer families there, families go there, and they're referred back to you, that if there are individual issues, they could be addressed. Is that not true? Between that combination of that, that's a resource that's already in the community that's very strong. There's a lot of resources for families that are struggling. So I mean, I personally don't feel that they would be sidelined in any way with the group, that they would be resources.
I'll comment on you know, I can just tell you, I've been in 504 meetings with the guidance council. I've been in IEP meetings with our school psychologists, and that gets addressed all the time.
So there's just a lot of resources for folks in the community that if there are issues that come up, and there's always issues with the move. A move is big. There's no one saying it isn't. There's ones you can predict and ones you can't predict, but there's a lot of resources already in place, services here in our community that can address them. So we're very well situated to handle them. So sorry.
Yeah, well, no, thank you for that. And again, thank you to Medfield Outreach because they provide a great service, and it's a great partnership.
The one thing that I guess just want to comment on is that while, you know, I think having the campus would be great, let's just say, okay, you know, it gets voted down and we have the school at Dale. The issue with having it at Dale, you don't have any more available land. It's not like, you know, you can, okay, we can, you know, continue to, you know, have this nice, you know, walking trail and all this other stuff. I mean, we have the land that we have. And, you know, if any of you have lived in cities, if, you know, they say if you can't go out, you go up. So, I mean, we just don't have the footprint. Whereas here, I just am astounded at, you know, you have this nice campus and then it's going to back up to all of this green, you know, green space. To me, it seems, you know, very comforting, you know, at Dale, you're surrounded by the, you know, police station, and you have the other side where, you know, where you have all the houses. Those houses are going to be there. They're not going anywhere. You don't really have any place to go. There just isn't a lot of physical land. And just when I saw the renderings, I just wanted to say I was just struck at how, I don't know, majestic it seems.
There's one question.
Thank you.
I think it was Richard Judge asked, excellent presentation. So can you clarify, is this an all or nothing proposal?
That's a great question. Lynn, would you kind of speak to that? Because I think even Tracy, you had just mentioned, you know, if this doesn't pass, you know, we feel a dam. And at our vote, town vote, there's not, it's a binary vote. It's either at the block or no school, but then there are repercussions. And I'd love for Lynn to come up there.
First, I just want to highlight a couple of things about the MSBA process. The MSBA process is a highly prescribed process. Can you hear me now? Okay. The MSBA process is a highly prescribed process, and it was established to assist and ensure that districts achieve the most educationally appropriate school for that district. It's checks and balances through every stage of the process to ensure that you don't get to the point where you're asking the town to vote and you haven't turned over every stone or addressed every consideration or issue throughout the process. It's, it's very highly unlikely that in the past anyway, that once you get to the end of this process, that a school doesn't pass. Sometimes there have been schools that don't pass for various reasons. However, once a school fails at the ballot, you have 10 days to address MSBA and tell them what your plans are for either revoting the school or withdrawing from the process. Because you have invested all this time, and by the time we get to the vote, it'll be 2 years in the process of making your decision on what the most appropriate school and site is. MSBA will not allow you to change your project scope, your budget, or your schedule. There is some consideration on schedule if you have to go back out for a revote, but you have to go back to the ballot with the exact same program in order to be able to remain in the process that you're currently in. If you want to put it on another site or build a totally different school, then you have to start the whole process over again. And most schools, it takes a couple of years to, at minimum, to get back into the MSBA process. You have to go back and file a statement of interest again, go through the whole eligibility process again, and start the process all over from the whole process that we've been going through for the past, since 2017.
No, sorry, there isn't a next.
I can quickly tell you a couple of dates. As Tina mentioned, we submitted the draft of the schematic design to the school building committee and giving them a week or so to review that and make comments. Next week, we're going to be focusing on the total project budget and making sure we've covered all the bases in that, and we'll be presenting the total project budget to the school committee for review in advance of the August 18th school building committee meeting. At that point, we'll be asking them to vote to submit the schematic design and to approve the total project budget. We have a requirement of submitting the project budget to MSBA 2 weeks in advance of submitting our full schematic design package, which is scheduled to be submitted on September 8th. And as Chris had said, there are 2 opportunities to go before the feasibility assessment subcommittee with MSBA, and that will be either September 20th or October 6th. That subcommittee is made up of educators, different people from throughout the Commonwealth, from the Department of Revenue, engineers, architects, and MSBA staff. They review the schematic design. They make sure that that the package is complete and that everything's been addressed in order to make their recommendation to the MSBA Board of Directors to approve the project funding agreement, which is establishing the project scope, the project budget, and the project schedule. That is scheduled to take place on October 27th. That's the MSBA board vote. Once the MSBA board votes, we'll be asking the town to vote, and the dates have not been established for a November special town meeting, but we're hoping to get that set up for early in November. Once the town votes, if it's a positive vote, then MSB enters into a project funding agreement with the district and town to pursue developing the design and into construction documents and moving into construction thereafter.
Just one comment. Richard Judge had a follow-up. He said he was asking, so the answer is yes. And I'm paraphrasing this. It's not binary, but there is additional delays and work that would occur, right? I think that for all intents and purposes, it's
For all intents and purposes, this project would be dead and we have to start over again, essentially. So I guess the question is it's not Dale or Wheelock, it's Wheelock or Wheelock.
It's Wheelock or the project's over and we start again.
correct. I hear, is it an all or nothing proposal? It's the proposal of the new school.
Yes.
We take it to the town.
At
the town
Wheelock,
says yes
at
or no.
Wheelock, so at Wheelock.
There's also, I could tell a story about this. I went to this with Sharon, and you were on the SBA.
I was an administrator in the Sharon schools for about 14 years. And we did 3 MSBA projects in the Sharon schools. The last one was the middle school. And if you've been by Sharon, you'll see the middle school. It's very nice. However, that school, we had done an initial MSBA process, went through the design process, feasibility and everything else, and it failed at the vote. That delayed us 5 years. And we had to go back 5 years. They made us throw out the old design and we had to redesign all from scratch again. So the price tag on the first project was $28 million. By the time we built it, it was $45 million. So because of that delay. So just as an idea of the kind of work, and we went through this process both times in that process. So.
As I did in the introduction, I'm on the warrant committee. Steve Callahan is also on the warrant committee with me. We're both here tonight. And I just want to clarify for the question, Mr. Judge, is that this process from the town's perspective is just beginning. We're going through a whole process on the financial review, on the elements that are questions that are being raised. And over the course of the period of time between now and a special town meeting, the warrant committee will be reviewing all these items. So when it comes to the vote, the key question, because the vote is going to be on a bond issue. That's essentially what it is. It's on this proposal that you see tonight, but it's on the bond issue that will be needed to support that. And in the process between now and the special town meeting, we will have a series of meetings, some of which I think we plan on having, all of which will be public when the warrant committee meets, to review these items, to review the discussion, to make sure the pricing is affordable. And the warrant committee will come down, as we do on all our town meeting issues, on a vote on whether to support or to dismiss this article. So I think my point is to say that this will be done in a broad context, in the context of the town's needs. Because in the warrant committee, we're responsible for the financial reporting of the town and what we can afford with the schools and all the operating budget. It's a very long process that we're just beginning, but I want to give confidence that there'll be more information that comes out on that from the warrant.
Any other questions? All right. So this is how you can follow us and how we can receive feedback, newelementaryschoolproject@gmail.com.
We've got the website. Thank you for blowing that up. We've got a Facebook page and we're on Instagram and Twitter, slowly getting into the 21st century. And, but essentially, I think tonight, at least for me, what this evening emphasized is how grateful I am to the experts that we have in our district, Mary, Steve, Jeff, but not only within our school district, but also on the SBC committee. Many committee members are not here, but we have the bios on our website, and a lot of these, most of these people work in the industry, and I'm just so grateful that our town has these wonderful volunteers to give their time and expertise to this project. So
I would also add Michael up for Jessica to that. So Michael,
of course,
the Director of Finance and Accountability. Michael has done 3 MSBA projects when he was in another district. He does a lot of work on them, and he's a pro at it. So we're really fortunate to have him.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. Always. So yes, but to follow up, just to emphasize some upcoming dates. So August 18th is when we are reviewing the budget and voting as the SBC entity. And then on August 25th, we're going to have another community conversation, but we will also have another forum just on budget alone to really dive deep and explain to the community, the details of the budget. Because although this is the fun stuff, the classrooms, all the potential, the reality is this will cost. So we will have plenty of opportunities, but we also welcome people to come to that August 18th meeting and come with your questions. We will take questions before we vote. So I just want to emphasize that as well, that there's ample opportunity for the community to give it. Absolutely.
It's not like this is the first time.
Yes.
I think the construction project is very well set. It was presented at the last week. That won't change, but what we're working on now are all the soft costs around construction.
And I'll share that recording of last night next week. So, and to that note, pretty please sign up for our email updates. You can access that through our website. Anything else? No. All right. Well, again, thank you very much. Stay tuned. Thanks. Oh, thank you, Bob. All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Thank you. Motion by Bob. Do we have a second? Second, Susan Maritan. I'll take a roll call vote. Bob Sliney, Tracy Rogers, Susan Maritan, Tim Knight,
Aye.
Anna Mayo Schaefer. Aye. All right. Thank you, folks. Thank you very much.